You're listening to Unkillable.
If you didn't kill us last night, we are unkillable.
Hosted by Brandon Tierney.
You know, I did see the 3-part docuseries on Rodgers entitled Enigma, right? And I got to be honest with you. Like, I saw the trailer. When I first saw the trailer, maybe about a month or so ago, and they had some video of him in the woods, I guess, one of these retreats, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. I still don't even know how you say it, whatever it is. You know, the drug that his drug of choice. And I remember saying to Sal, because Sal said, "Hey, you looking forward to watching this?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm so disgusted with the season, and I don't say I don't care about learning about stuff about Rodgers away from the field, but it certainly wasn't paramount with the way the season was going." Anyway, long story short, since I've had a little time off and a little time to delve into some other things, I watched it, and I put the first one on. I was fairly late, maybe like 10:30 one night. Kids were obviously sleeping, and I'm like, I think my wife had third grade mom's Christmas dinner, whatever the heck they had. There's so many. Oh, I love the holidays, but good God almighty, Jesus, so many things. My God, it's almost too much. Our parents had it easier. I know my dad had it easier, and I'm not complaining, but man, oh man, there's just so much stuff going on that I really haven't had much thought on the Jets outside of sitting there and watching the 3-part docuseries as I now lead into the last couple of days into what this pod's going to be about. And, I went into it, as I said, when Sal asked me, I'm like, no, not interested at all. Won't watch it. Don't care. Didn't win for us. And I like Rodgers. You guys know that. I have communicated that often on the pod. There was one point where maybe after the Cardinals game, I think it was 31-6. I was so disenchanted. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I don't think he could play anymore. And then, of course, since then, he started showing some signs. And my new position, which is where I am today, is, hey, if the new regime wants him, then I'm fine with that, right? Because I don't really think there's a better option. And I'm starting to see snippets from Aaron Rodgers that he can still play a little bit, right? So it's been interesting in the sense that as I went into this 3-part series on Netflix, liking Aaron Rodgers and a little curious about, just how far he pushes it off the field with his, I don't want to say alternate lifestyle, but I'll use that for a lack of a better description. And I don't know about you. It's funny. I was texting Sal over the holiday here because he saw it before I did. And I texted him. I think it was after the first episode. I'm like, dude, I love it. And I actually like Aaron Rodgers more than I did going into this. The thing about Rodgers that is hard to separate, I get it. Number one, he's very outspoken. When you're outspoken and unapologetic, you are polarizing. And when you're polarizing and you're no longer productive, that creates a different energy around you. And then I think you mix in how some people look at his position on certain things pertaining to either medicine or politics to an extent with maybe he was going to run, for office. Oh, God. I just think that Aaron Rodgers, there's nobody that doesn't have a reaction to Aaron Rodgers, right? You saw Ryan Clark on ESPN. I guess that was last week where they were going back and forth. And I don't jump into that stuff. I keep it clean. I don't have any media wars. I don't have any media beefs. I haven't been dragged into one. I certainly don't start them. My show is my show. My pod is my pod. My life is my life. That other ancillary shit is completely unappealing to me at this age as a dad, 2 little ones. I just don't care. Like, to go back and forth with tweets, like a 12-year-old to me is very, very unappealing, as I said. So, but I do like Aaron. And as I watched this, I went from liking Aaron Rodgers to really liking Aaron Rodgers. I really do. And the thing that I came away with the most, like, not that I doubted this, because you can't be great. I mean, with the Jets, as an all-time great quarterback, of course, before he got here, you can't be great if you are not locked in to your profession. And I think that there's a thought like, well, does Aaron Rodgers, and we didn't have this years ago, but I think it's kind of permeated some of the conversations the last couple of years. Like, two things you hear about Rodgers. How invested is he truly in football still? And number two, what kind of a teammate is he? Well, all you have to do is watch this and watch how rigorous the rehabilitation is and how locked in he is to try to get back and to reclaim, I won't say his status in the game. I think that I think he's aware enough, self-aware enough to know that he's just not quite the player that he was. And it's amplified by inferior coaching and schematics, whatever. I think he knows that. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers looks at himself as the best quarterback in the NFL anymore. And if he does, he's fooling himself. I think it's more through an honest, self-reflective prism that is really motivated by going out more on his terms and not limping off a field or going out with, a touchdown to pick ratio, excuse me, which is, more conducive, more consistent with that of a quarterback who was like 22nd, 23rd best in the NFL. You can't tell me. Now, I know it hasn't led to wins, and I know it's been much better lately, so maybe it's a little prisoner of the moment because there were many times this year where Aaron Rodgers had a chance to punch one in late, and he didn't do it, and, 0 for 1, 0 for 2, 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 0 for 5. I believe it's 0 for 6 now. You lose track. But Aaron Rodgers, his numbers in totality are still pretty good. And, I watched Rodgers, I watched him rehab, and I watch him interact with his teammates. And, I think that Aaron Rodgers is a good dude. He's a complex person. There's no doubt. He's got interest in certain things in life that I don't have the bandwidth for. I've got no interest in. They just don't excite me. I'm just maybe not that on that level intellectually curious enough to pursue that stuff, like medicine of medieval medicine, or I love to read and I studied journalism, but maybe literature from thousands of years ago. It doesn't really move me too much. Not that I'm not familiar with any of it. I obviously did it in high school, but never really excited me, never really gripped me or grabbed me. And it does. It motivates him. It opens up his mind. It's interesting. Like it's and he even said this during one of them. He's like, I'm an alpha. Like when I walk in that locker room, when I step in that huddle, when I walk on that field, I am the alpha quarterback and it's my team and I'm an alpha. But when I'm away from the facility or the game, I don't know what word he used, but man, he truly is different. And in some ways, I don't know if this will come out right because I'm certainly not envious of him, but I am maybe slightly envious of how willing he is to try to absorb as much information as humanly possible. And, I do think that, and they touched on this, the relationship that he had with Brett Favre, I think he learned from that, how he treated Jordan Love, which was better than how, he was treated by Brett, largely ignored by Brett. They didn't have much of a relationship, maybe not as bad as it was positioned in the media. And they actually hooked up. He went out to Brett's estate in Mississippi, which was cool to see. I found that interesting. But I do think, like, if the Jets were, to go maybe a younger quarterback, and if Aaron's back next year, and say Aaron loses his job midseason if they're not winning, whatever, I actually think that Aaron Rodgers would do the right thing. I think that Aaron Rodgers generally tries to do the right thing. I think that Aaron Rodgers generally tries to respect people and tries to be a good person. And I don't know that I really process sports that way when I'm in the moment, watching games, because that's not really my main consideration. Really, when it comes up, I want to see if you could play. And really where it comes up is when you find out that somebody is not a good person. Either, they're just rude to kids. You see a video where they shun kids and they don't do the autographs, or they're just more overtly mean, or they get arrested and there's some sort of criminal activity. Like, then of course it's gonna enter the conversation. But if you're a baller and you keep a fairly benign profile off the field, off the court, off the diamond, I'm not necessarily probing or trying to gather intel on what kind of human you are. I'm going to assume that you're a decent person until you leave a team, and maybe there's some former teammates that kind of weigh in, or coaches, or whatever it might be. Then that's different, and I'll process that. But man, oh man, the the stuff that Rodgers does is yeah, I find some of it, I don't want to say weird. I'm not here to denigrate something that he finds interesting. Again, a lot of it's not for me. I mean, going to a foreign land and smoking a pipe of, I think you smoke whatever he's smoking. That's a little different than having a gummy and hanging out with a few buddies by the fire pit or going to a Christmas party in town. Yeah, that's fun. You can do that once in a while. I got no problem with that. The other stuff, no, I'm not going to actively go on retreats and search out these obscure remote parts of the world and just go in a deep, dark thought chamber and, and self-reflect. But quite frankly, maybe some of us can learn from Rodgers. And I found not about everything, but I found myself saying, again, it's not jealousy. And it's just like, wow, where does he get the ability, the inner drive to pursue all of those different things? And by the way, let me be clear about this. There is such a thing as a pseudo-intellectual. And I know some, I'm sure you know some, where they try to present themselves as more intelligent than they really are. And, once you get past the surface stuff, pardon me, whether it's, the history of our world with wars or religion or politics or the economy, non-sports stuff, right? The philosophy, various, whatever, you get a sense that well of information is not very steep, and they kind of expose themselves. But the more Aaron Rodgers spoke, the more I'm like, holy shit, how does he know this? Now, I guess anybody can espouse certain things, and if I don't know the absolute truths of what they're espousing, I can't necessarily fact check them on that. Number one, I don't have any interest, and number two, I don't have the internal database to say, oh, that's not true, that's not. But I guarantee, with some of the hate that's out there for Aaron Rodgers, some of the things he said on the show, if they were factually incorrect, I'm pretty sure he would have been called out for that. All the internet sleuths. So he's just a really, really interesting guy. And it made me wish even more like we had him as a Jet when he was still at the apex of his powers, which he clearly is not. But man, watching him get after the football rehab stuff was inspiring. I told you guys on the last pod too, like, and I'm guilty of this, and I shouldn't be because I had the injury. Granted, I'm just looking for functionality to whatever, work out twice a week, coach the kids, do all that stuff. But, the ruptured Achilles tendon is, number one, it's about as invasive of a procedure that any athlete can have. And it's by far the most detrimental to regain, burst and all the things required, just those requisite, physical traits to do your job. And, because maybe I got swooped up in the hype and the greatness of Aaron Rodgers, I just, hey, listen, if anybody could overcome this at the age of 40, why can't it be Aaron Rodgers? But let me explain what happened. So imagine, how can I do this for you? Let's see. So, all right, just imagine if these are your toes, right? And this is the back, this is the heel. This is the heel right back here. And going upward is the calf and eventually into the thigh. When the Achilles tendon snaps, and you may have seen this when it happened to Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals. Now you see it fairly often in slow motion. You actually see like a jolt in the skin, which then reverberates, and the entire Achilles tendon, which goes from the back of the bone, again, these are the toes right here, to the back, it rolls all the way up to the calf like a lampshade. Like those fruit roll-ups that your kids have where they're like or even the gum that comes in that pink thing that is like 6 feet of gum and you unravel it. That's what happens when the Achilles ruptures. Or take a Band-Aid, pull it in either direction, let go. And I remember when I was playing basketball, I was in a league playing in Manhattan. I was about 32, it was a while ago, still kind of young, still trying to get after it. And you like the doctors aren't allowed to say, oh yeah, you ruptured your Achilles without imaging. And I couldn't get the imaging until the next day. So they administer something called the Thompson's test, where they squeeze, I don't know if it's the calf or somewhere in between there. They squeeze it, they manipulate it. If the foot doesn't reflex, that means that it is completely severed and disconnected, and you have a ruptured Achilles. And I remember my doctor saying, I can't really say it because we still need the imaging to determine the severity, blah, blah, blah. But he's like, without saying, he's like, I would imagine you're going to have surgery. And it's a fairly safe bet, a fairly safe guess on my end that it's a ruptured Achilles. And I just take you through that process. I remember I was living in an apartment in Manhattan in a pre-war walk-up, right? And which sounds fancy. And it was nice. It wasn't too far from Central Park. It was nice. It sounds fancy. It's also a complete pain in the ass because these pre-wars really don't have elevators. So I remember, and I was single, wasn't married. I don't even think I had a girlfriend at this point. So for me and I was on the 4th floor. For me to get up, and they were these long, again, wooden pre-war, when the architecture was and the craftsmanship was real. It wasn't like just pumped out at a factory like it is now. It was nice. And I remember those stairs, 1, 2, 3, 4 to get up to my apartment. I would take my crutches and throw them all the way up. And they wouldn't always land up there the first time. And then I would just put my ass on a seat on a stair, and I would push myself up 1, 2. And that's how I would get up the stairs. And then I would somehow get to my feet, get the crutches, limp to the next set of stairs. Boom. I say this because it's brutal. It's brutal. And what I have learned, not only, from, I didn't really learn this because I lived it myself, but maybe it was further illuminated for me, to be fair to Aaron, but really watching him play the last month or so, he is regenerating physically. Where's Evan at? Ev, how you doing, buddy? You good? There he is.
Hey, I'm good.
Have you had a chance to see the Netflix documentary on Rodgers?
So I watched I think it was the first episode of it, and then I got kind of distracted by other things. But no, but I thought the first episode was pretty interesting, where he's kind of it's right when he gets hurt, and then it's taking him through all the beginnings of the stuff, and he's talking with Ella Trotch on the plane about all this stuff. I thought that was super fascinating.
Yep.
The guy, because that guy, every time anybody gets injured, that's the guy.
That's the guy.
It's insane how big he's.
What was your opinion? You've shared it, but I want you to share it again. Forget about Rodgers, the player. If he hasn't been horrendous and he hasn't been amazing, so he's somewhere in between. I think we all agree on that. Do you like Rodgers? Are you a Rodgers fan, or do you not like Rodgers personally?
No, I definitely. I'm all for him. If it's all about at the end of the day, I kind of just look at it from the NFL standpoint. I know some people, they look at it from the personal standpoint, and I can understand how that sometimes blinds people. But from strictly the football standpoint, like you've been saying, if the past couple weeks are any indicator, I would be all on board.
Yeah, but don't you think even deeper than the football stuff, because the football stuff has kind of defined itself at this point. Although I do think he could be better next year with better coaching and some change in the concepts, which we've talked about. You got to get guys in motion. You got to do some things. It's called eye candy. When the opposing defense doesn't see anybody moving, they can settle in, and quite frankly, has made his life tougher. Forget about that stuff, though. What really jumped out to me, and again, I don't think you could be great unless great, all-time great, unless you are so physically and emotionally and intellectually dialed into your craft at the highest level. You might have 2-3 good years, but money might change you. You might get hurt. You might rehab half-assed. There's been some players in all sports that came flying out of a cannon and then kind of dissipated. Their star dimmed as time went on. Rodgers is dimmed only because he got hurt. But I do think that there's a lot of people out there, when he first came, preying on the Jets' vulnerability and the Jets' desperation. He's a mercenary. Nobody wants him. This is hard to express in a podcast. That's why you guys have to see this and forge your own conclusions. But when you see him after he gets hurt, just the look of sheer, resignation and absolute defeat from a competitive perspective. I think it's been marginalized, and I think it's been hijacked. How much this guy, because of the other stuff off the field, exactly. How much this guy loves playing football. That really came across to me in the Netflix documentary. Just to summarize, really, before many of you go back to work, New Year's, whatever, plop down, sit down, start to invest in these episodes. I really think that they're worth watching, even if you hate Rodgers. If you're not sure, maybe change your opinion. If you kind of want Rodgers back as it is, I think this will only further enhance how you want him back with the New York Jets. But either way, it's a riveting watch. It's interesting. I learned a bunch, and I walk away. And I always thought Rodgers was a good, decent dude. Maybe misunderstood, maybe a little bit too eclectic, or little, again, not wacky, but I'll stick with eclectic for my taste. But I like Rodgers, and I like him even more after watching that. So let's see what this weekend brings. I will hop on right after the game on Sunday, but pretty soon this shit sandwich ends, and it's move forward time, and I can't wait. So download the pod, spread the word. You got a Jet fan out of state, out west, wherever it is. Let your buddies know we got the pod. Download it. I appreciate your support. I will talk to you before the new year, so I wish you a happy new year then. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your night. I'll catch you guys on Sunday. What I expect to be pretty much an ugly shellacking up in Buffalo. I'll see you guys then.